Hello and welcome to the International Youth Day online seminar and concert brought to you by BLW SA Zone 8. Firstly, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank my man of God, Reverend Dr. Chris Oyakilome. I'd like to thank my campus ministry director, Pastor Chike Ome, and of course my zonal secretary, Pastor Eddie Moore. I love you dearly, sir. Gone are the days where the youth of Africa leave their future in the hands of others. The youth of today are taking their future into their own hands. And today we have an exciting program ahead of us where we will have some keynote speakers, some panelists in a panel discussion speaking to you about a variety of topics. Trust me, you don't want to miss any part of it. And of course, it's going to be topped off by a concert where we have some amazing acts. We have Akaz, Carltone, Divine Gold, International Steez, and many more. Right now, we'll begin the program by taking a moment to pray. So wherever you are, just bow your heads and close your eyes as we pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity to come together in fellowship in your name. Lord, we thank you for this program that we're about to have. We thank you for everyone that will be speaking here today. We thank you, Lord, for they speak by your Spirit, O God, and the words that they speak are not just mere words. As they speak, those that are listening, they're impacted with the words that are spoken, and they're impacted, ready to make change in their societies and in their life. Amen. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of the show. God bless you.
A father wanted to avoid his son when his son asked him for a play date. So he really wanted to take this nap. He was exhausted from a long day, and he thought, to get away from this big challenge, I'm going to give my son a 1,000-piece puzzle of the world map, and I'm sure he will not figure it out. I'll be able to take my nap in peace while he tries to piece this puzzle together. 1,000 pieces. Can you imagine? Do you have any idea what strategy the son could have used to complete this puzzle? Well, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Matlodi Speakwin Khatle, the founding director of Speakingdom. Speakingdom is a Pan-African leadership academy that uses public speaking as a tool to eradicate socio-economic issues. And today I have a simple question for you. What strategy do you think this boy could have used to put together a puzzle worth 1,000 pieces of the world map? I think it reflects back to the global conundrum that we have. Youth engagement for global action. But first, let me set the scene of this conundrum. So we are led by something called the Sustainable Development Goals, which is actually forecasted by the United Nations. And we know that because of these sustainable goals, the youth plays a pivotal role in the global agenda for change. This agenda is set by the UN and has been signed by all member states. The aim to create peace and prosperity for all people across the world. But does that really make any sense? Does it mean anything for you and I sitting here today? Let's bring it closer to home. For us as Africans, we have something called the African Union. Now, the African Union is a protectorate body for all 55 countries on this continent. And it's simple. They've set out something known as Agenda 2063, which is a strategic framework that outlines the aspirations for what they call the Africa we want. I can almost hear them saying, Amandla, away too, in the background. But again, does that mean anything for you and me sitting here today? I'll help you. I'll bring it even closer to home. And I'd like to bring it as close as South Africa, our very own borders of the Republic. Now, we have something known as the National Development Plan, which is actually a 500-page document that outlines how different sectors of the economy and society need to come together to eradicate poverty and emancipate us from economic slavery. 500 pages. Words. No action. Does that mean anything for you and me? Sitting here today, wondering what our role is in the global discourse for youth engagement. I think there's something very critical that we're forgetting here. There's a layer to this that we have not yet tapped into. One of the most important and pivotal layers of this global funnel that seeks to bring about change. And that layer is the individual. That layer is you. The change is not going to come from the United Nations Agenda 2030. The change is not going to come from the African Union Agenda 2063. It's definitely not going to come from the South African National Development Plan set for 2030. Instead, the change is going to come from you. The change is going to come from me. And so you're probably asking yourself, what exactly is my role in this global funnel? How do I position myself strategically to make sure that I am in line with the change that I hope to see in the world? The question that you need to ask yourself is quite simple. What role do I play in my home? What role do I play in my street, in my community, in my province, in my country? Because ultimately it's that role that will dictate my level or propensity for success. And it's that role that will ultimately help me to shape all those agendas that ultimately aim to do one thing. They all aim to help us live a decent life. And now you're probably asking yourself, so what does this mean? Kahle kahle uthini? Kwenzahalang? Where do we start? 3 things. Think, aim, and push. These are the 3 things that will help you build a sustainable brand for yourself as an individual, and ultimately a brand that will help Africa, a brand that will help South Africa, and a brand that will ultimately help the world at large. Now, what do I mean by think, aim, and push? Simply put, number 1, think global, but act local. So we all heard this narrative time immemorial that charity begins at home. I'm sure we've tired ourselves listening to narratives of this nature. But really, when you act local, you realize that it's your responsibility to start where you are with exactly what you have in your immediate environment. Everyone has access to a challenge. That's the reality. There are challenges every single way where we can turn our gaze. But now the question is, are you positioning yourself to see opportunities in challenges? And I'd like to make a quick example. There's a friend of mine who at a very young age was not happy with the situation of using pit latrines in Alexandra Township. This was a big, dire problem for her. And for her to wait for the municipality to call upon government to do something about it was just not going to be enough. It was not going to cut it. And from this challenge, she then started an organization called Building Blocks. And what Building Blocks simply does is they are in the business of building toilets for the citizens of the Alexandra Township. Now, I'm sure a lot of us can think of similar, if not more drastic challenges that we face in our own communities. But the precious thing about this is to act upon it. The time is ripe for young people to rise to the occasion of leadership. It's not going to be enough anymore for us to wait upon some leadership or savior of leadership that's going to come and drag us out of our challenges. I always look back at the story of Paul in the book of Acts 9 when he had that experience at Damascus. Paul did not wait for the opportune time to start preaching the gospel, to start his missionary work and to start evangelizing. Immediately when God spoke to him, he knew that it was D-Day. We should be doing the same. We should be thinking globally, but acting locally, and realizing that we have every single thing in our disposal to be the change that we want to see. And secondly, I said we need to aim. What do I mean by that? Aim intentionally. Are we hungry for our success? Complacency is just not going to cut it anymore. Think about The Hunger Games. It's a popular American series or movie, and it's got a sequel to it. People were hungry. They were in the quest for survival. How many of us are in a quest today to make it out of our current reality? And thirdly, push. Push the envelope to your greatness. It is said in the movie Lucy that we only use 10% of our mental capacity. What about the other 9%? Other 90%? We know this very well with our gadgets, our cell phones. We know very well what limit, what capacity our cell phones can go to. But do we know the same about ourselves? Do we know how hard we can push ourselves to get to that level where we ultimately tap into that which God has destined us to be? Are we tapping into the 90% in our relationships, in our finances, in our intimate relationships, in our friendships? Tap into the 90%. Do you know that by 2030, 75% of the African population will be under the age of 35? That means a plethora of young people, a plethora of opportunity, a plethora of potential. Tap into that potential. I'll bring it back to the story of the boy that we started with at the beginning. When he looked at this puzzle, it was a 1,000-piece puzzle of the world map, and he just couldn't get his mind around it. 1,000 pieces. Where do I even start? But at a quick glance, he turned one of the pieces around and he realized this looked like a feature of a face. And before he knew it, he was turning around all those pieces of the puzzle, and he realized that all these pieces contributed towards a face. It was a face of a man, a structure, something that he was used to seeing. So before he knew it, he was actually putting together pieces of the puzzle of this man's face. And he thought to himself, if I can put back this man together, then I will be able to put back the world. And that is my challenge for you. Let us build African brands and let's engage to make the globe what it needs to be. But it starts with you. Thank you.
The 12th of August is commemorated annually as International Youth Day, a day upon which youth issues are brought to the global sphere, to be discussed and their potential to be celebrated. The day is endorsed by several instruments and declarations that seek to promote youth participation and inclusion in governance, international politics, climate change, and development in general. While young people's voices, their actions, and initiatives were celebrated under the theme Transforming Education 2019, this year's event is befittingly titled Youth Engagement and Global Action. And it is within those parameters that I will be speaking today. It is important to note that like many other celebrations, this is occurring during the COVID-19 pandemic, an occurrence that has altered many aspects of life in various unimaginable ways, perhaps making it even more challenging for the youth to engage in conventional methods like meetings, conferences, and symposia. Despite this year grants the youth an opportunity to evolve, an opportunity to innovate, and to create beyond the borders. Young people have been the vanguard for democracy and good governance, from Greta Thunberg championing the need for urgently responding to the call to redress environmental degradation, to young people protesting in Nigeria, and more recently, having our voices heard through initiatives like the Black Lives Matter movement, a generation that the older ones have called the keyboard warriors with wry humor. My previous statements have indeed highlighted the context in which the youth come to engage. Yet there are still layers and layers and layers to this. It is evident that the youth have taken up struggles of the new generation for democracy in practice, economic freedom, for access to land, and access to education. It is the youth across the continent who have the voice to our global conscience, the ones speaking against racism, against sexism, against tribalism, and other isms. Now, to speak specifically to the title that I chose under this year's theme, which is participating in invented and invited spaces. Now, what does this mean? Before I go into the gist of today's topic, perhaps I'll start by introducing myself. I'm a practitioner in the social policy and development at the South African Institute of International Affairs, and my specific works are in economic integration and regional cooperation within the African continent. The African youth are faced with many challenges in this context, but also with challenges come opportunities. Now, I'll allude to the first part of my title, which is participating in invited spaces. Now, what do we refer to by invited spaces? These are spaces that are formally enacted. These are spaces that are formally initiated for youth to have their voices heard, to have their participation being accounted for in either policy making or in governance issues. But while there are theoretical provisions for youth to participate in such forums, the practice may be in stark contrast to what the youth engage.
Welcome to this power-packed panel discussion. And I'm your moderator. My name is Tanaka Craig Kanangoni, but you can call me Mr. Generation Dapper, the one and only. I'm from Monash University, South Africa, and I'm studying psychology and communications. And this panel discussion is proudly brought to you by BLW SA Zone A. Now, before we start, I just want to take this opportunity to thank my man of God, Reverend Dr. Chris Oyakilome. Pastor, thank you so much, sir, for affording us this opportunity. I also want to thank my CMD in the person of Pastor Chike Ume and my zonal secretary, Pastor Eddie Moy. Pastor, thank you so much, sir. So I'm going to allow my panelists to introduce themselves, starting from the highly esteemed.
Thank you so much.
My name is Nkateko Sombani, and I'm an audit consultant as well as the director of Sasana Group Pty Ltd.
Amazing.
My name is Basitsana Sabushiro. I am a finance student and accounting graduate from the University of Witwatersrand. I'm also a network marketing professional.
Hi, my name is Vanessa Eleline. I am the founder of the Queen's Goals as well as a TV and media personality.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. Now, as you already know, we're celebrating the International Youth Day. So we're going to be talking about a very important subject, the future of education. Obsolete versus futuristic. So before we start, I just want to give you a bit of background statistics from the Department of Statistics of South Africa. So the results they found the quarterly labor force survey for the first quarter of this year, 2020, indicated that employment decreased by 38,000, taking us to 16 million, and the numbers of unemployment increased by 344,000, taking us to 7 million, and the unemployment rate increased by 1%, taking us to 30.1. And now this is in the age gap of 15 to 34. So we're going to be tackling some questions. And the first question that I want to ask my panelists is as follows. Is education in South Africa obsolete or is it futuristic? So is our education system outdated? Do we need to update anything? So I'm going to give it up to the floor. What do you guys think?
I definitely think that it's obsolete. However, I would say in what context? Because, for example, I am privileged through my initiative, the Queen's Goals, to work with a lot of schools.
Yeah.
And I find that I work with a lot of public schools, and then I also work with some private schools. And I find that the attitude towards education in public schools is very different. You can even see it in how the students carry themselves. A lot of the subjects and kind of the programs that public schools have aren't geared to teach a lot of students, especially in the townships, to come out of school and make something of themselves. That's why you find that a lot of students who graduate from public schools come out and they take work in call centers, because that's the easily doable job after you come out of public schools. Now, if you look at your private school counterparts, they have a lot of programs that they do. I mean, they have, I think, something in Nigeria, it was called home economics, but I know they have a subject here as well. And it's basically they teach them, they have bakery classes, they teach them how to sew, how to knit, they have computer classes. And you might find all those little things irrelevant. But for example, a student can already be working in his or career field when they're in a private school through that education system before they even graduate matric. So somebody's already thinking that, okay, I'm learning pastries at school, I want to open a bakery and eventually franchise it after high school. Does that speak to the privilege in the education system? That the more students in independent schools have more opportunities because of the education system, because the education system isn't as obsolete? I certainly think so. But personally, from my experience, I have seen that it's more so obsolete in public schools than it is with independent body schools, which is private schools.
That is very interesting. Does anyone else want to add on to this?
Yeah, I'd like to actually add on to what you're saying. I do believe that, I agree with her that the South African educational system is obsolete, because when we use the term obsolete, we're not just saying it's outdated, but we're talking about relative to what other countries are doing. So if we're looking at it on the world scale, of course, it's obsolete because the education system is designed to add value to the industry. But then if you have a system that is not adding value to the industry, but is increasing the unemployment rate, that means that that system is obsolete. It's not able to compete with its own economy, regardless of the economy outside.
That is very interesting. I came across a picture on social media, and it's comparing China and Africa. And on the Chinese side of the picture, they're being taught technology and the like. And then on the African side of things, they're being taught about the body parts of a locust, of a grasshopper. And the caption around the picture is asking, like, okay, so what skills are we being taught in our schools in Africa? And this would take us to the second question, which is very, very important, which is, how is the education system modified to equip students for the fourth industrial revolution. I mean, we are already in the fourth industrial revolution. So how's the education system here in this part of the world training, or rather equipping our students for the fourth industrial revolution?
Following up on the first question, I just want to flow into the second question, that I personally believe that the education system in South Africa specifically is tailored to be absolute. So it's not that the way that things are happening or the result therefore is absolute, but rather that it is tailored to be like that. It is meant to be like that because that is the culture that is being taught. As you know, we've spoke that if you look at the South Africa as a whole, the government kind of created dependency on them. So that kind of also flows into the education system, that it is tailored to be absolute, so that dependency is always there. If you look at China, China is very independent in what they do. So they run their country rather as independently as possible because they are more on advancement than just trying to create dependency. So I think it is tailored to be absolute, but it has 100% chance of being futuristic. So the way that it is tailored, it is meant to be absolute, but if you are well led enough, you'll understand and take the right steps to personalize it and make it futuristic.
I like that word that you can mention. It's tailored to be absolute. So it can also be tailored to be futuristic. Man, as you can already see, it's getting heated already. Right, so swiftly moving along, we're going to move to the second question. Now, I want you to pay particular attention to this one because it's very interesting. How is the education system being modified to equip students for the fourth industrial revolution? Now, that's you and I. Do you feel that we are being equipped at all, and are we being equipped for the fourth industrial revolution?
Okay, what I'll say is that when we talk about the educational system, it's divided into three, which is the primary, secondary, and higher education.
Yes.
And then we have basic education, which includes both primary and secondary, then higher education, which is just the tertiary institutions. What I'll say is that there's a huge gap between the two that needs to be bridged. For example, in most universities now, a lot of universities, based on the COVID-19 pandemic and all the strategies that have been put into place in different higher places of learning for hybrid learning, have actually exposed how that the preparedness of the university was not there. You know, it has now we've been able to see an unveiling of how prepared different institutions were for the fourth industrial revolution. But then what I'll say, so I'm just now talking about higher education. I've not even gone to basic education, which is where the big gap is, you know. So that is, I strongly believe that government has not done enough, or rather the educational system has not done enough to cater for that gap that is there. So we are not, like I'm saying that I won't even dwell much on higher education, but just talking about basic, because we cannot talk about the educational system and exclude basic education. As much as we are in a tertiary institution, we came from a system that brought us here. So we need to start from that system. We need to bridge that gap. So that is what the educational system in South Africa is meant to focus on. We're now meant to start from basic education and then bridge that gap between basic education and higher education. So to answer your question, I don't think that we are prepared yet for the fourth industrial revolution.
I think to add to that, I don't think the South African government is the education system is equipped enough where the fourth industrial revolution is concerned. I do believe that the government is beginning to take steps towards it. Like, for example, during the State of the Nation address this year, President Cyril Ramaphosa announced that coding would become a subject, would be included in the curriculum in high schools. But I think the issue that we have in Africa is that we look at our education system and we look at the fourth industrial revolution, and there is like a separation between the two. I don't believe the two should be mutually exclusive. I would use tertiary institutions, for example. I'm studying branding and communications at Vega. And I believe that in what I am studying, technology, as much as it is included, for example, when you're talking about branding, you're talking about social media branding, you're talking about apps, you're talking about websites. I would like for it to be included in courses. Like, for example, where branding is concerned, I should be able to learn about user interfaces. I should be able to learn how to design websites. I should be able to learn how to build my own app. Because if you want to be skilled in your field, when you're talking about branding, you come to a client, you can say, I can do everything. I can design your website, I can design your application, I know about user interfaces, I know about all that. So the point I'm trying to make is that it's as though, the fourth industrial revolution is a subject on its own.
Yeah,
But I believe it should be integrated into education entirely, not just in the basic education, but also in tertiary level. It shouldn't be a subject on its own, but it should be included so that it's practicalized.
Yeah.
So you learn it as kind of like a life skill, so to speak. But I think another issue we have in Africa is that we underestimate the relevance of the fourth industrial revolution, for example, and equipping our young people with the skills they need to survive in such a world. I remember there was a project my team and I were working on. We called it the Digital Literacy Program. And we wanted to donate computers and computer accessories, basically a computer lab, to a school in Diepsloot. And getting funding for that project was so tough. Because people don't see the relevance. They're like, why do you want to give them books, give them food, give them uniform. So we are still at that level where we are not even seeing the relevance of how we can equip young people to be prepared for the job market in the fourth industrial revolution. And I think that's because, to be honest, sorry to bring up another project again, but we had another project with the Inner City Mission just 2 years ago where we donated solar lamps to students in Diepsloot. And this is an area that has no electricity in that particular extension of Diepsloot. So we are talking about the fourth industrial revolution when students they can't even study with electricity. They're studying by candlelight. You get my point? So that also is the mentality of the government, because they are thinking we have to provide food for them. We are still struggling to provide electricity. So why are you telling me fourth industrial revolution? But that keeps us where we are, because we are not thinking of how we can improve. We're thinking about how we can just sustain and manage. And I don't think that is profitable. So to say that we are equipped, no, we're not.
That's very interesting, because I'm thinking, I was asking a couple of students when I was on campus, and when I asked them, like, what do you actually think about the education system in South Africa? And they went on to tell me, they were saying things like, our books are outdated. We don't even know what's happening around the world. We've been kept in this box, in this frame, and the education system keeps us back, whereas the world constantly is advancing. Which now leads us to the third question, and it keeps getting more interesting, because the way we're talking about this, we're trying to frame it around Africa, We're trying to frame it around Africa, of course, specifically now also in South Africa. And the other question is the education system in South Africa Afrocentric, number one? Number two, if not, should we make it Afrocentric? And then, how is it being modified to suit the the cultural environment? Now, I'll give you a bit of a background context on this one. You find that, I'm sure all of us have friends who are studying like outside, in different parts of the world. And I personally have friends who are studying in China, and my friends will tell you that they have a separate place for students, international students, where they're taught in English, whereas there are students, native students, who are taught in Mandarin or the different languages that are found in those particular countries. So, is our education system even Afrocentric? Are we Eurocentric? Should we become Afrocentric? And should we suit it around, that particular culture? What do you guys think?
I think it boils down to what would be the purpose thereof. Because if you focus on the purpose or the core of something, the execution would be flawless.
Okay.
So what would be the purpose of the education system being Afrocentric? Why should it be Afrocentric? So in answering that question, I will ask this question: that what would be the purpose of it being Afrocentric? What are we? It's go to the first question as well. How the South African education system, absolute or futuristic? So what would be the purpose thereof of it being Afrocentric? Are we just trying to fit into culture or mimicking what other cultures are doing, or is there a definite purpose why it should be Afrocentric?
That is very interesting. That's a very interesting question. Are we trying to fit into culture? But of course, that'll be a debate for another time. But which is I think reason as to why this question was modeled in this manner is that there's been an argument for a couple of years with the millennials that we're being taught Europe education. For an example, in international studies, we're debating in class that like our democracy is so Eurocentric, but it's not working in Africa.
Yes.
So should we have our own Afrocentric democracy? What does that look like? And but this question, the fourth question I want to ask you is, it's very pertinent to the times we're living in right now. And that is, how inclusive is the education system in Africa, in South Africa specifically, in terms of students and pupils, so basic education and tertiary education, with minor or major disabilities. So for an example, learning disabilities like ADHD or mental health issues such as bipolar and the like. So is our education system inclusive of such students here in Africa, specifically South Africa?
I think before I answer that question, if you would allow me,
please.
I'd like to add on to something that she asked from the previous question, where she said, what would be the purpose of making the education system Afrocentric? And one thing that I'd like to say is that we often think that when we want to make the education system Afrocentric, it is to be taught in our language. Like you were saying, a friend of yours was being taught they're being taught in Mandarin or in Cantonese in China.
Yeah.
And I don't think it just goes beyond that.
Yeah.
I'll give an example of when I was in high school. I studied a lot about I did learn about Steve Biko and the Black consciousness in June 16 and apartheid, but I really believe that I learned a lot on end about the Cold War, World War II, the Cuban Missile Crisis, Karl Marx, and so on and so forth. And I believe that helps shape your mind as a young person, because you are taught that this is priority. We'll teach you about your history, but this is priority. So when we are saying that should we make the purpose of making our education system Afrocentric is that when we are taught about Africa, we are not taught about Africa pre-colonial period. And we need to look into actually Africa pre-colonial period was very industrious.
Yeah.
We had people who were craftsmen and worksmen and farmers, and we had entrepreneurs that were industries. So when we look at studying our history, it's not just in theory, like, oh, this is what we were doing back then, but it's practicalizing it and teaching in our education system, changing it to teach skills to young people and not just theory, paper knowledge that cannot translate into something productive. I'll give you an example. When Ghana became a republic in the 60s, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah set up schools that taught craftsmanship. And that's why a lot of Ghanaians are very industrious. Even Ghana right now, yes, all African countries have economic issues, but Ghana is doing very well right now. And that's because of some of the things that stemmed from the schools that Dr. Kwame Nkrumah set up. So the point is that in looking at changing our education system to be Afrocentric, we need to look at some of the morals and values that Africa had then that we can then teach these young people in terms of teaching young people a skill that they can turn into something productive for themselves. Because Africa wasn't just reliant on having a boss.
That's right.
And it wasn't like you worked for someone. And even if you did, it was more like an apprenticeship. Right? So you were taught a skill so that you can develop it and grow something for yourself. So I believe that would be the purpose of making our education system Afrocentric, is to teach our young people skills. And this is what Africans were doing pre-colonial period.
And that is amazing, yeah?
Just to ask another question.
Yeah.
Is Afrocentric then, does it mean is it the skills or is it Afrocentric?
Everything.
Everything.
It's in theory and in practical, so to speak. So you can't just be taught theory, okay, this is the history of Africa, this is what was going on, so that you know where you're coming from, right? We know our heritage. But what then do you do with that? Because I found that was something I had struggled with, because during last year and this year, my father has been teaching me a lot about the Igbo people and where we came from, how we descended from the Iri people and the kingdom and that king and so on and so forth. And I'm like, okay, this is great. What do I do with this? but I'm learning about the egalitarian nature of the Igbo people and the systems that we had. How can I take that and how can I adapt that into an organization and teach people the skills that our people had and had been using in that period that can be profitable for moving us forward as Africans?
I actually want to jump on that because, you know, we're moving from that topic of Afrocentric education, and now we're moving into the inclusion of the how inclusive the education system is.
Yes.
We're coming to things like ADHD and the like, you know, and I want to find out, because for an example in Africa, if a person has bipolar, they're assumed to have mood swings. You understand? And they say, no, he's not learning because, you know, he doesn't work hard. That time maybe he's got ADHD. So how inclusive is our education system in terms of that? And I think you made mention of the fact that, you know, before the show started, how you're quite passionate about this and how you've looked into some of these things. So do you want to shed more light on that?
Yes, definitely. Well, I think that the educational system has done their part to try and bridge that gap, but I still think it's not bridged as yet, because there are, you know, schools for special needs and for people that may have mental disabilities, learning disabilities, and so forth. But I think that where the missing link is in terms of the training that is being given to the teachers, because I mentioned something earlier that, you know, you have someone, let me just give a case study. You have someone that was born into a home where they were said to be erratic or hyperactive, or they have mood swings. They're like, no, this person is moody. But you find that that person maybe has bipolar, but then they spend most of their time in school. So, and they have to be in a formal environment where they have to sit down and concentrate. And that is where you find that person might start becoming erratic or hyperactive. And then the teacher is like, no, get out of my class, or any of those things. What I'm saying is that teachers can be well equipped on how they can diagnose that this child has special needs. And then they are able to remove them from either that school and put them in a school where they'll be able to be well catered for. But where the missing link is the diagnosis. You know, sometimes in our Africanism, we can even be saying that, no, maybe this child was bewitched, or this child is so and so. You get those kind of things. So you find that when a teacher is now trained on how to deal with students or children of that have special needs, they're able to diagnose it early. But sometimes you find that these things are then picked up when the person is already in the corporate world. What does that then show you? It shows you that conditions like ADHD and bipolar are things that can be managed through treatment. So when that person is put under treatment, they're able to learn with other kids that are said to be, you know, normal. So
on that, actually, I want to challenge you. Make sure that you also educate yourself. Don't just wait for the teachers to learn these things. You know, like in psychology, you learn in abnormal behavior, for example, the DCM-5, which brings about all these different kinds of things. Make sure that you also take this opportunity to make sure that you educate yourself to understand, so that when next time you come with a person who's bipolar, you just don't run and say they've got mood swings. Or maybe, God forbid, they have schizophrenia, you say, no, they're a mad person or they're crazy. Such terminologies don't work if you don't understand the particular thing. But that brings us to our last question, and this has to be my favorite question. Does South Africa provide enough opportunities, keyword, enough opportunities for young people to start up businesses?
Yes.
I believe the opportunities are there, but are they exhaustible?
That is key.
Are they tailored to be exhaustible? Because I would say that even though the opportunities are there, I would say they're not exhaustible. Because as we've spoken even earlier, that I was listening to Bosi, and he was talking about how the culture in South Africa is tailored to have low class and high class. You would look at townships like Alexandra and Sandton. He explained how it's tailored to be like that because they want it to be like that. So it goes to that there is enough opportunities, but are they exhaustible? Is a person in Alexandra being exposed to those things, or is it only to IEB or other people that are in other sectors? So I would say that a person should take it upon themselves to find the opportunities. The desire has to be driven in a particular person or in each person to go after the things that they want. So the desire has to be driven. Because if the desire is driven, then they would make sure that even when the opportunities are there, they're exhaustible. So the opportunities are there. Are they enough? Yes, there might be enough, but are they exhaustible?
Yeah.
I do believe that yes, they are there, and they are. In my view, yes, they are exhaustible because in doing research for this, I found out that there's something called the SEDA, which is the Small Enterprises Development Agency. And this organization literally teaches you everything about starting a business. How to write your business plan, how to generate clientele, how to sustain your business, how to grow your business. And that's not just one of them. They have the Gauteng Propeller. They have the black-owned businesses. I think it's called Black Small Enterprises. They have IDC. They have all these organizations that are actually there to help young people. Actually, when you look at how the South African system, where it comes to business, is set up, especially after apartheid, it was they actually put a lot of programs in place to nurture young people into business and leadership. But I think where the issue is that there is funding, there is the training, but I think the problem is that to begin with, the idea isn't there. So yes, like she was saying, just to agree, is that yes, the infrastructure is there, but the idea to begin with isn't there. The initiative for a young person to say, I see something in my community, I want to make a difference. I don't think a lot of young people are taught leadership skills. They're not taught to think to create something. So the infrastructure is there, but I think the idea, and in terms of after the business is started, there is no sustainability. It's like the government helps you start, and it's like, you're on your own, sissy.
Adding on to that, it's how you'd even see that entrepreneurship is not taught and is not included anywhere in the South African education system. So that's how you would know that it is not being instilled in them to have the desire to start their own businesses. They're tailored to want to sign a contract that keeps them at a job. They're fighting for job security instead of creating your own thing.
See, the man of God, Pastor Chris, has taught us so many times, through the teachings that he's taught us, that you can, number one, you don't need to be dependent on the system of this world. Secondly, where you are, start with what you have. I'll leave you with a quote from, the esteemed Pastor Eddie, and he's always encouraging us. He's saying, go out, educate yourself, and make money. Because Pastor said that money is a respecter of value.
That's true.
You see, so if you come up right now by yourself, create value, trust me, the resources will come to you. But that's all we had for you for this panel discussion. But be sure to catch us next time. And I want to take this opportunity to thank my man of God, Reverend Dr. Chris Oyekilome, for this wonderful opportunity to host this panel discussion. I want to thank my campus ministry director in the person of Pastor Chike Ume and my zonal secretary, Pastor Eddie Moyo. Thank you so much, and God richly bless you.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to this special segment of International Youth Day commemoration all the way from BLW SA Zone A. And I really like to express my gratitude to our man of God, Reverend Chris Oyekilome, for giving us this amazing opportunity to be talking to you today. We are commemorating International Youth Day all around the world. And the theme for this year is Youth Engagement for Global Action. I think it's very timely, when we're talking about how the youth can be involved, in the framing of tomorrow. Like Pastor would say, framing your aeon. You see, if you look at the world today, you realize that almost all of us, we are living someone's idea. What do I mean by that? When God created the heavens and the earth, when he created the earth rather, he never said this country is called South Africa. He never said this country is called Zimbabwe. He never said this is the UK, he's the US. These came about in some point, during the course of time. And these were ideas of men. They sat down, they said, let's divide the earth from here to here. We call it South Africa. From here to here, we call it Botswana, from here to here, we call it France. These are men's ideas. These are men's ideas, you know. So during their time, they did some actions that influenced the life we are living today. But the tomorrow we are going to live in will be highly influenced by the decisions that we are making today. And as the young people today, I mean, of course, you know, especially in Africa, the young people constitute to a higher population than the elderly. So you realize that Africa really is a young continent, because the majority of the population is actually less than 30 years of age. So you realize that the youth really have a role to play in creating the Africa we aspire to, the Africa we like to see in the next 3 years, in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years. You see, so question as a young people today, what is your role? What is your role? What action, we're talking about youth engagement for global action, what action are you taking to ensure that we can realize, or we can improve the standards of living, especially in Africa? You know, in Africa, they talk about high levels of unemployment. They talk about the challenges we have with the education system that is practiced in many African countries. You know, the issue of diseases, the issue of poverty. So as a young person, these solutions are not going. I remember Pastor told us on numerous occasions how that problems and challenges gravitate towards their solution. So the challenges we are faced with today, it means we are the ones carrying the solutions. Look at the global pandemic or scandemic, whatever you like to address it as. You see, it presents opportunities, because in every crisis you need to realize that there are opportunities. You see, when crisis like that happens, you need to be awake to opportunities. What are the opportunities that are presenting themselves around me? Or how can I, Pastor says, success starts by looking out for human need and meeting that need. So I'm calling on you as a young person today, especially if you're watching us from Africa. You know, there are so many needs around us. There are so many challenges. There are so many problems around us. It means we're the ones carrying the solutions. So how are you going to meet out for the needs of the people around you? We're talking about the issue, probably the issue of electricity. We're talking about the issue of higher unemployment rates in so many African states. We're talking about the issue with regards to governance in Africa. You know, the abuse of human rights. You know, in countries like Zimbabwe, we are seeing currently, in countries like the DRC, you know, and in so many corners of the continent, there are so many issues that are there. So as a young person, besides just talking, what actions are you taking? You know, as we commemorate International Youth Day today, be challenged to take an action. You say, I'm going to take action in this regard. I'm going to take action to address the issue of electricity. I mean, if you look at, for instance, if you look at the amount of solar that is produced in Africa, you realize that Africa should not be facing any challenges with electricity. Why? Because, I mean, we have so much solar that we can use for energy. Can you see that? So, and also looking at the fact that, I mean, even if you look into the future, you realize that, I mean, now they're even talking about, electric cars are coming on the scene, you know. We can leverage on that. So as a young person, stand up to be counted, you know, be among those that are influencing change in your community. You can start where you are. Someone said, Pastor, where do I start from? You can start from right where you are, on your campus, in your community, in your city, in your nation, and then you grow from there. From there, you go to the rest of the world. So we have some amazing music, arts, and presentation that we have in store for you. We've been talking so much. We'd like to bring some entertainment your way, entertainment that will edify you, you know, and help you focus as you take action towards the direction of your inspiration. So you have some amazing presentation coming through right after this. So don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. Thank you.
time is ticking. This is action o'clock. Now is the time for the generation of the new creation to rise and be so loud in a world that requires men to be silent. Because God has given you a voice that can reach the ends of the world, effecting changes in the lives of men. For fear has become a luring symphony dictating the direction of nations. Darkness is singing havoc in governmental structures while the lives of men remain blinded and lost in confusion. But why worry about the intensity of darkness if you are a shining light, a hope that dissolves all doubt and dispenses the life of God? And in the midst of despair, the world awaits young people who are in motion and ready to take action. So would you become John the Baptist, a voice standing in the wilderness echoing the revelation of the King, Jesus of Nazareth, who was, who is, and is to come, the only hope of the world? Would you become a David? Recognize not your age or the height of Goliath, because his head is up for taking. Encourage yourself in the Lord. Pursue the goal. Recover all that is lost and overtake evil mandate. Would you be bold, unafraid to fit your size in the shoes of government and leadership? To remove intellectual perversions and negative ethical traits? Yes, the doors are shut, but you have been made the key. And while others swim in deception, would you walk on water as you preach salvation to every ear? Because the Spirit living inside of you recognizes no barrier or knows no limits. This is action o'clock. Now is the time.
Sakile ngoku emoyeni wami na katekela nzinze. Sakile ngoku emoyeni wami na katekela nzinze. They say joy comes in the morning. This is the morning of my life. They say joy comes in the morning. This is the morning of my life. Lokonzi komal shayen, lokonzi komal shafam, lokonzi komal wabul. Lokonzi komal shayen, lokonzi komal shafam, lokonzi komal wabul. Yehovah imurisi wamina, singe pumarichu. Uns tekala, yenans tekala, ans sala, ans yesala. Uns tekala, yenans tekala. Yisala, Auntie Yisala. Logonzi Komal, Shafam, Logonzi Gomans, Wafun. Logonzi Komal, Cheyenne, Logonzi Komal, Shafam, Logonzi Gomans, Wafun. Yehova umakota hingwasho, angakona lafaneka na wena. Untinike mule, zita china, untinike mabo, zita pokote. Logonzi Komal, Cheyenne, Logonzi Komal, Shafam, Logonzi Komal, Waful. Logonzi Komal, Cheyenne, Logonzi Komal, Shafam, Logonzi Komal, Waful. Logonzi Komal, Cheyenne, Logonzi Komal, Shafam, Logonzi Komal, Waful.
my mind, you keep it sanctified. All my thoughts are you and you alone. You refresh my mind, you keep it sanctified. All my thoughts are you and you alone. You refresh my mind, you keep it sanctified. All my thoughts and you refresh my mind, you keep it sanctified. All my thoughts and you, Lord, you refresh my mind, you keep it sanctified. All my thoughts and you, Lord, you refresh my mind, you keep it sanctified. All my thoughts and you, I can get you out of my mind. I can get you out of my mind.
Can get you out of my mind.
You're all that I ever think about.
You're all I think about.
Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death,
I can get you out
I fear no evil,
I can get
for thou will keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee.
you all I think about.
Check it. It stays.
Jefferson mode.
Got you asking, who's my plug? You won't know, man, you won't know that is my plug. Got you asking, who's my plug? You won't know, man, you won't know that is my plug. Perfect. Jesus, 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 Jesus is my plug. Jesus, 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 Jesus is my plug. Plugging me, 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 plugging me. Jesus, 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 Jesus is my blood. Jesus, 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 Jesus is my blood. Plugging me, 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 plugging me. Your life is like a movie. Play a role before you see the credits. Life is short for all the cutting edges. Life is long for all the camera edits. Like I'm young, son, call the jagged edges. You already know me, I be dabbing on another one like I'm Khaled. I can think I ain't talking Khaled. I be wavy, wavy, wavy. I be wavy, yeah, you know I'm valid. I don't need any different credit. Roman divas, I ain't talking debit. All you school kids better pay your credits. Keep it Nike cause I'm always checking. Figures out, just plug, you know it. Stay with just so you move it ballin'. Dropping. Hey, I'm dropping steppers like I'm always rolling. Got the figures, yeah, the balance shows it. Too many commas before the gospel. Too many shows, I be blessing others. Too many racks, I just need elastics. Like I work at the bank, I just do with papers. Where you at? Got you asking, who's my plug? You won't know, man, you won't know that is my plug. Got you asking, who's my plug? You won't know, man, you won't know that is my plug. Jesus, 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 Jesus is my plug. Jesus, 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 Jesus is my plug. Plugging me, 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 plugging me. Jesus, 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 Jesus is my plug. Jesus, 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 Jesus is my plug. Plugging me, 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 plugging me. Pardon me, pardon me, pardon me. Let me increase the economy. Like a remainder, he carry me. I have no fear for the enemy. There's only one possibility. Prosper, got the authority, hum on the heaven. Is giving me power, you're plugging me. All of the answers I got them in numbers. Never put a question marks, I got commas after my commas. Into my commas, now they got commas on me. Bear fruit from the Red Sea, others top mind, you know farmers. It's Jesus Christ in the front line. This is just blood, not red wine. He leads me right, I don't need a sign. Without Christ, you lost. Looking to the sky like, Lord, please give me a sign. Nah, no, not me, never. That God wisdom got me living clever. Access for the treasure, my source, Christ, I did that. Come get that, Christ.
Got you asking who my plug.
It's my blood, Jesus is my blood. He said, here's my blood, blood, Jesus is my blood. It's Jesus, he said, here's my blood, this is my blood, plugging me, 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 plugging me.
Yeah, let's go. Yeah. Ooh, I've been waiting my whole life now. Jesus Christ, my love, the way, the truth, the life now. In my die vicarious, what I derive now. Visions plainly right, so I ain't died now. City lights like Jasper, we'll be walking through the pasture. It's a journey with the master, just arrived now. Visions filled with rapture, I'm held captive by the things I captured. Holy Ghost is master, the full saints in his heart says that there isn't a God. I'ma put my hands together, and that wouldn't be in the blood. I'm an instrument of God, like when Moses and a rod. I could never be a snake though, and I would never try to rob. Praise God in the sanctuary. Gotta keep you out the cemetery. If you didn't know, he's the king, the judge, and the presbytery. And he's more God than the son of Mary. Beyond literary, no obituary. Only life by the spirit is necessary. Got me living, man. Oh my, I'm in love with Jesus Christ. I can change it up to save my life. Been like this like ever since I died. But alive, your word is my life. Oh my, I'm in love with Jesus Christ. I can change it up to save my life. Been like this like since I realized I'm a perfect man. Don't be asking me if I'm alright. I had to cry when I preached the word, and someone said what emotion. A lot of times what I need is a lot of prayer. This right here is transportation, heavenly relocation. When you gotta get recreated, from the stage is reanimation. This life is more than 100 bands, but it ain't cost me 100 rand. Looking better than 100 grand. I know these demons who wanna dance, but they always be doing the running man. I'm in a race, my feet are prettier than a wraith. And my life now is all by his faith. The life of praise will live by this phrase. My steps are relying, not worry about the pace. My boys escape disgrace by this grace. Always gotta be M's for the W, but only biblical is what pays. Don't worry about Mercedes, what it says. Remember there'll be one day. Oh my, I'm in love with Jesus Christ. I can change it up to save my life. Been like this like ever since I died. But alive, your word is my life. Oh my, I'm in love with Jesus Christ. I can change it up to save my life. Been like this like since I realized I'm a perfect man. Don't be asking me if I'm alright. Yeah. Sure. Hey, let's go. I'm just living by his grace, and every day gets better, so I haven't seen better days. So it's not the reason why I pray. Come and see me where I stay. You be staying more than a day. All I'm thinking is souls when I'm in LA. When we cast out demons, the angels array. Relocation.